morning everyone, thank you so much for coming, it's very good of you. Again to confirm, my name is Kenneth Bannerman. I'm the founder and head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, or as we also call ourselves for short, ABCT. We're based in Glasgow and the charity formed in 2006. Now, just before we eventually unveil the memorial, I'll first of all pass over to a gentleman you of course know extremely well, the Right Honourable Sir Gavin Williamson MP, who'd like to say a few words.
Certainly. Well, can I just say thank you ever so much. Firstly, thank you for what you do, because this is such an incredibly important part of the history and tapestry of our nation. It was one of the biggest civil engineering exercises ever undertaken, the building of so many airfields, the length and breadth of Britain. And without those airfields, the Battle of Britain would have had a different outcome. So it's so important that work is done not just to preserve as many of those airfields as possible, but also to remember the history. Because actually by remembering the history, we're also remembering the sacrifice that was made by so many so that we have been able to preserve the freedoms that we enjoy today. So if I can just say an enormous thank you to Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust for the work that it does. Now, I'm not sure if this is a fly past that you've been organising, but I'm very impressed at the power that you've been able to deploy. But thank you for what you're doing. It's incredibly important work from both a national perspective, but also a local perspective.
Thank you.
And I just want to add to that really and say a huge thank you from the Parish Council. Thank you for being so helpful. Thank you for all the contact you've had, and our clerk Amy and Jess have done a wonderful job organising this with the Airfields of Britain. So it's brilliant. And the one thing I did read about this airfield was that at one stage in the Second World War, it was the busiest airfield in Britain. So that's amazing, and it's great to actually now commemorate it. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Well, just before we unveil the memorial, bearing in mind the erratic weather here, I'll just give the usual quick history of this airfield and why it matters in the very important bigger picture. Wheaton Aston dates back to December 1941, and it's very closely allied with famous Shropshire airfield, still part of the RAF, Shawbury. Shawbury has always been primarily a training airfield, and the unit that was based there at the time, number 11 Service Flying Training School, was enormously busy. Shawbury's a great airfield, but it was struggling a little bit for once because of weather conditions and also runway construction of hard runways. So the school there based at the time had to make some quite remarkable detachments to, for example, famous Yorkshire airfield Lindholm, which gave its name to a very famous search and rescue device, airfields in Lincolnshire, and airfields a bit nearer to here that you know the names of, like say Bratton, Peploe and Seifert, for example, to name but three. So Wheaton Aston proved very helpful, especially to Shawbury and the flying school, because if nothing else, it came with hard runways, concrete runways. It's a bit of a strange initial start to its life, because when you look at official records, it doesn't seem to have an actual stated opening date. That wasn't uncommon, but it was slightly unusual in saying it didn't actually open in such a date. But even within a day, as you can see within in flying school records, it was clearly seen as an excellent location. The formality of the school using here came about in March 1942, by which time the school operated under a different name as Number 11 Pilots Advanced Flying Unit, or PAFU for short. But by the summer of 1942, it was already beginning to be recognised that, partly through the excellence of Wheaton Aston Airfield and how busy the flying school was, it was thought that a separate flying element might need to be created. So in August 1943, a new unit was created called number 21 Pilots Advanced Flying Unit. And this is around about that time, as you rightly said, when Wheaton Aston started becoming really busy. Between here and all the other associated satellite and relief landing grounds, this unit had on strength 150 aircraft. It was a famous training aircraft of the day called the Airspeed Oxford, twin-engined aircraft. So it operated from Brace Airfield. Some standout long-term ones were, for example, Perton near Wolverhampton and Seifert, fairly close to you. Originally, Wheaton Aston was meant to be parented by Hexham Airfield. So the AFU, if we can call it that, carried on being very, very busy throughout the rest of World War II and into peacetime. Then come November, December 1946, the AFU was transferred to well-known Cotswolds Airfield, Moreton in Marsh, which again emphasises, I'll mention just in a few seconds, how incredibly important our airfields are in our everyday lives, because that is where the Fire Service College is now based. So at the very least, every officer in the fire service is trained at this airfield. That's how important Moreton in the Marsh is. So come July 1947, Wheaton Aston finally closed, incidentally on the same day as Seifert. And then it was loosely parented by initially Shawbury and then Turnhill until towards the end of 1953 the airfield land was transferred to the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. And therefore since then there's been this somewhat more specialised agricultural work carried out here. And but the airfield is still very, very tangible. The hangars may have gone, but there are various buildings here headed by the control tower just up the road here. And then this is all part of what we call the social service of airfields. The eastern perimeter track is now a very well used and long-standing public road. So just finally to say, just before we unveil the memorial, as we say in our travels, within reason, please do all you possibly can to help our airfields, both active and disused, because they are not only the most tremendous forces for good, but they are now being, albeit belatedly, being recognised as quite simply our greatest ever physical and historical assets. We just cannot remotely afford to lose our airfields in our everyday lives. Just quick example, if any of us have to go in the hospital, you are actually relying upon a disused airfield in this country to keep you alive. And how it works is very simply this. This airfield, which also regulates time in this country, so when you hear, for example, the time pips in Radio 4, they are coming from this airfield near Carlisle. But of course, most important of all for every single one of us, health. If we don't have our health, you've got nothing. So, as some of us know from direct personal experience, if any of us have to go in the hospital, this airfield, through the regulation of time, is checking and calibrating all the electronic timing devices in our hospitals. This is literally life or death. So that's why we just need to take far better care and remembrance and acknowledgement of our airfields, active and disused. So just within reason, just please do all you can. Just finally to say, everyone's been very nice and helpful here. We've come back through public demand, not least with what happened last April. So we will be back in this general part of England during next year, just a matter of when. But we're going as fast as we can with this. We unveil memorials, but we also try and help save airfields, and too much to mention what we do, but we are, without a shadow of a difference at ABCT, making the most almighty difference to the advancement of betterment of society as a whole, as of course we all should in our own ways. So we're doing our very best to try and help Wheaton, Aston and all the other airfields, and remembering all the incredibly brave and dedicated people who have served here. So again, thanks so much for all you, for attending, and therefore we're delighted to be unveiling our latest memorial to yet another of Britain's top physical and historical assets, in this case the one and only Wheaton Aston airfield. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Oh, beautifully done, that, isn't it? No,
Thank you. Thank you.
That is absolutely superb, isn't it? It looks, it's got sort of Air Force quality to it.